Hello buddies, so in this video we are going to see about the clean code architecture, detail about the clean code architecture. So actually I got one comment like, so we have a playlist like, right, TB manager, actually the product manager, the notes manager, we have full playlist, the clean full application with clean code architecture we did in the starting. It's like 4 or 5 months back. So in that I got some comments like, I didn't, it's like some details about the clean code architecture is missing. It's like it is full of practical I did it's lack of explanation about the architecture is missing over there. So actually I felt like that I didn't explain anything over much about the details. I directly went into the code and I started working about it. So this video is about telling and each and every folders and breakdown of all the folders in the clean architecture. Okay, yeah, let's get started to it. So I'm not going to code anything in this throughout the video, just going to explain about the details. So I have a blog, this is my blog, so you can see it over here. You can see the whole blog and understand. You can, if you are ready to read, I'm going through and I'm using this blog only. I'm going to explain everything. Okay, so clean code architecture is like structuring our folders and codes uh, in a manageable way and more productive way. That's why this clean code architecture found. So it doesn't mean like this one is best and MVVM all outdated or oldest one. So it is not like that. It is based on your project, which one is feasible for you. So in case of this one, if you have a huge project with numerous database, like that means numerous database means you have API calls and you have local database and you have other data sources, means you can use clean code architecture. It will be well managed based on the data sources, and you can, it is very easy. You can, while seeing the folder structure, you can understand where to get that one, where to get this one. Okay, in MVVM also same thing. So MVP and all, you can use it for very small applications. If you want to make application in 1 week or 15 days and you want to go in a much faster flow, you can use that one. And everything is like that, same kind of thing. So this is also kind of same thing. So those things are architectures, design patterns. This is architecture. So both are different. So MVVM, we are going to use the MVVM over here, and clean core architecture as well. We are going to apply the architecture. Okay, so this folder is like this. So MVVM is like model view controller, you know that. So that is different. So this is folder structure, and we are going to apply this clean code in that one. Okay, so that's how this is going to be. So actually you may know that we have folders like so. So that's what a clean code architecture. So first we will start with the folder structures in clean code architecture. Okay, so in clean code architecture we have a folder structure like this. So this is the folder structure. So we'll have a presentation layer, domain layer, and data layer. So three layers we'll have. It is like a package. So presentation layer, domain layer, data layer. So in the presentation layer we will have the UI related things and data presenting. So whatever we are presenting to the user, showing to the user, it will have it will go in the presentation layer. Okay, like UI screens. So the screens we are designing in XML or in Jetpack Compose, it will go over there. As like that, activity fragments, all those things, it will go in a presentation layer. Inside presentation you can create any folders and you can use it over there. Okay, that is those things will go over there, and view models mainly will go over there. Okay, view models won't come out of the presentation. So in the presentation you will have mostly the main activity fragment and UI. If you have Jetpack UI, means Jetpack Compose screens will be there, and then view models will be there, and other UI related interface fragments, classes, those things you will have under the presentation layer. Okay, so those are presentation layer is completely of user perspective. So whatever we are showing to the user, those things. Okay, so in the domain layer, so domain layer we will have the use cases and the abstraction of repositories. Okay, so domain layer, the use case is nothing but, use case is like we are going to break down the each action, each and every action of your application into a each class, single class. which means separate class. So that's how use cases. So use case is usually, this usually use case is like, um, if one use case will be like, means one flow will called as one use case. So user coming in and they are entering the username, password, and clicking submit button, that is one use case. And they are giving forget password, and in the forget password they are entering the username, and they are giving the click the forget password, that is called another use case. This is normal flow. Before starting the project, we will note down all the use cases based on that. So here also the same thing. Here we will consider as each use case as each actions the user performing. Okay, so the same thing. So user is logging, clicking the login button, means we will, that is one use case. We need to add one use case for that. And user signing up, and user sending message, not receiving message, sending message, and getting all the product list. Okay, and deleting the product, editing a, so those will all come under use case. So use case means each use case will have separate class. So login use case will be a separate class. This one use case will be a separate class. Those are all come under this use case package. Okay, so inside domain layer we will have use case package. In the use case package we will have all these things. Okay, those are the things are use cases. Then in the repository we will have a abstraction, which means it may be abstract class or it may be a interface. Okay, so both thing, it should be anything. So it will be a interface, or mostly it will be an interface. You can use it as abstract class also. In the interface, repository will have different repositories. It's based on your screens or based on your main frame of your application. Or if you are doing with e-commerce application, in e-commerce application you can break down the repository like product repository means adding product, editing product, updating. So those things will come under inside the product repository class. File, okay, file or interface, okay, class. So our other thing, like in user repository, user means user details, updating user profile image, those things. And so each function in a repository will be a separate class in use case. So that is main. So whatever we are writing in a repository will be a separate class in interface. And this use case class, right, this class only we are going to use it in a view model. We are not going to touch anything behind this one. We are only going to use the use case in a view model. Actually, if we are using MVVM, we are going to use view model. If we are using any other architecture, we are going to view model directly in activity. So that is the only main point we are going to use those things. Okay, in the repository. So repository will be a repository interface will have the functions of the main thing. You have many repository classes based on your things, and each repository will have their appropriate action of that function. So if it is a product, if it is a user, or if it is a chat, means send chat, receive chat, add chat, like that. So this is function related repository. So if you have screen related, means in this specific screen we will have dashboard screen, what are the details. So those things will be added. So those are all will come under this repository things. Okay, so this module is like normal module, so whatever the module is, okay, the repository. So these two will be must come under domain. Okay, repository means not the repository implementation. So there is two things, so people will confuse like repository and repository implementation. Okay, so repository is like abstraction of the functions or classes or the actions which is performing inside the application. Okay, that is repository. Repository implementation is the implementation of this repository interface or abstract class inside some other class. That is repository implementation. That will be done in a data class. Okay, so that will be done in a data class. So if you see it over here, so I have a presentation layer, domain layer, and data layer. Okay, so in this use case I am having basket, chat, group, notification. Same thing in the repository, I am having each repository separately. Okay, so if I am having basket, open basket, all get all basket. Same thing if I open here, I am having the same thing. Okay, so whatever the function I am having over here in the repository interface, I am having that one in a use case as a separate one. Okay, this is how this will work. And in the data layer, now coming to the data layer, so what we will do is in data layer, the same in the repository what we are having here, right? So the same repository we will create it over here, that is repository implementation. So each repository interface we will implement in a repository interface implementation class. and the repository will be implemented. So I am having these repositories, right? So if you go over here in this repository implementation, I will implement that repository. Okay, so you can see it here. I am implementing that repository over here. Okay, so this is how. So once you implemented that, those functions will come here. Okay, so what it will happen, so in whenever we are hitting the use case will use case will connected to this repository. Okay, this repository. So if, it will call this repository function. This repository function will hit the repository implementation. So whatever we are writing inside the repository implementation, that is the real function. Okay, so what we need to write in the data and what we need to write in this use case. So inside use case we will have logics. Okay, business logics. Okay, whatever the business logics or whatever app related logics. Okay, not data related logic, app related logics. So calculating, adding these things, adding all the products. Okay, removing this one, or any status changes. So those app related product datas will be calculated or changed or validated inside the use case. Okay, what will happen in the data? So data will handle only the data collection things, which means API, getting the API service and validating the API. Validating the API response will handle in the data class. It should not be handled in the domain layer. Okay, it should be handled in the repository. So whatever we are handling, once we get the response and we are having 200, 400, 500, those response will need to validate in this repository implementation class only, not in the domain layer use case class. Okay, use case class. Okay, that is main one. So in this repository only we will have this. Okay, and other data like that, if you have local database, if you have room database, or if you have realm database or something, means those things also you need to handle in data. Okay, so then you mostly anyone will have lot of doubts about the data. So data will, if you can see over here, I have a data. Inside repository I have data source and data source implementation. So why we need the data source implementation? We should need, first of all, we should need database implementation, or we should not need database. So the thing is, we should not need data source or data source implementation if you are using one, if you are having only one data retrieving method, which means if your application is having only retrofit, only API service like that. Yeah, API. If you are getting only data from API services, there is no other data getting method, data gathering method, means you don't want to use anything like this data source or data. Only this repo implementation is done. You don't want to do anything else. That is done. That is paka. Okay. So when if only if you are retrofit, means we can use this one directly. You can write retrofit function inside this repository implementation, and you can return the data through the return method, or otherwise in the lambda function, wherever you want and however you want, you can do that. Okay, so if those things are, we have practical thing we have done in that playlist, you can see it over here. This is for this one. Okay, so those things you can do it over here. And why we need, when we need the data source and data source implementation, two things, right? So when we need the data source and data source implementation, those things and all. So when we need the data source and data source implementation is same like repository and repository implementation. Data source is the interface which will have all the function of the main function of the data gathering function, get API, all get and post things. And data source implementation will have all the implementation which will have the real action thing, which will directly connected to the database and get and fetch and retrieve data. Okay, so when we need the data source means, so when we are using more than one data related things. So if I am not having only API calls, I am having local database, room database, means I will have retrofit, not data source. So what will do, repository is a junction, it will act as a junction. Okay, so whatever the domain layer will connect it to the repository, so the domain layer doesn't know what you are doing in the database, data functions. Okay, what you are doing in the data layer. Okay, so what this one will connect it directly to this repository. Okay, the repository is responsible for to sending back the needed data which this domain is asking. So whenever this domain is asking for some layer, some data, it will go to this repository. This repository class is responsible for sending back the needed repository or any other appropriate response. Okay, so if it is not like that, so if we have more than one database means that time we will split like this. Okay, one is like remote database is for API call, another one is for local database. So these both things will be implemented here. Okay, so whenever this user use case is hitting, this repository will check from API we need to get or from local we need to get. Based on that, this we it need to transfer here or here. Based on that, it will handle. So repository will be one. If you are using more than one data source means you need to increase the package inside the data layer. If you are not using any more than one data source, only API calls means you can use it like this directly. If you're using API calls and that one means you need to have, so this is API call one, this is local one. So now if I am getting fetch all data, fetch all products means it will come here. So fetch all products. First I will check local. So I will check send, it will send to the local and it will check all the products. So if there is no product available, then it will direct to the remote. Then the real product will get, and then it will go to this repository, and this repository will send back to this one. So finally this repository is the uh, junction, or repository is responsible for sending back whatever the needed data to this use case. Okay, to this use case, not here, to this use case. So that is just clear about it. I'm just want to, so a lot of confusions about we need a data source or we don't need a data source implementation. That is doesn't matter. If you have more than one thing, just this repo implementation is very fine. You don't want to add any more things, because more folder structure will be a more confusion for developers. Okay, so don't make more folder structures until unless you needed those things. Okay, so this is fine repository and data source and all. When you need, you can do it over here. So here I have this one, and realm I have separately this one. So everything will be connected to this implementation. I will check, I need to take from realm or I will need to take from here, and I will return back to this. Okay, so that's how this will work. Okay, this whole MVVM pattern will work like this. So if you have any doubts or any queries about this, just let me know. You can check this blog also in your blog also to understand more about this. So this blog is continuing with full example explanations. Okay, yeah, thank you.